Yeah, so the balance patch is pretty huge. As you say, Hestia, the changes I think feel very strong. I have played with them a bit. We're definitely going to play a lot of guard tonight, but we're going to go through them. I do think guard were not as bad as maybe some people thought they were. I just want to clarify that. I think Imperial Guard were a very strong faction on release. I think very solidly B tier. You're talking on par with who else would I put in B tier? I don't know. I mean, I think orcs are very strong, but they can put up a decent fight against orcs. It's tough though. I think sisters could give them a fight. But well piloted. I mean, I think guard had a good chance against everybody. Necrons were a tough matchup, but they could do it. Blood Angels. They did have a lot of tools, and those tools have only gotten stronger. It just made them OP a little bit. It's possible. It's possible. So why don't we head over to check them out together? Why don't we? It's even a little bigger still here. All right. So nice note about feedback from players. There was a lot of feedback early on about guard. A lot of people felt they were underpowered. I wouldn't necessarily agree with that take. I think it took some practice to get good with them, but they were pretty strong. The devs are addressing it. I think there were some really, really good, solid issues raised by the community, and they have responded. So let's check it out. Let me move this over here. This is a bug-fixing patch with a central focus on responding to the first real battle tests of the new Astra Militarum faction. Pretty much all of the Astra Militarum roster has been updated to some degree, with the largest changes being to the abilities of the HQ units. That's key. I mean, those essentially determine how the faction functions, what its strengths are, what its win condition is. We've also fixed some significant issues with the core faction abilities that meant that soldiers of the Astra Militarum were not receiving the benefits of their training. Other significant updates are the training of Cadian shock troops to pull the trigger more rapidly, giving the Armored Sentinel a bit more punch and utility, and a rework of the Basilisk skills to be clearer and more reliable in action. So, Born Soldiers, this is their base momentum ability. Fixed issues per momentum bonuses not being applied properly. It definitely felt like Guard were gaining CP very, very slowly. In that game we played last week again as Sisters, I had and used 4 CP before Guard got to 2. They weren't ultimately able to use any because we sniped their HQ. Ordered battle line. Receiving an order gives a plus 10 baseline momentum whilst that unit has an order. So all the units stacked up in the row, when they receive an order from an HQ unit at the start of the turn, they will get a plus 10 momentum boost, which is huge. Fixed an issue where orders were not persisting into the enemy turn. So this was a big issue why units like the Commissar didn't see play. The Commissar has a really good passive buff. It's a plus 15% health buff, I believe. Or sorry, no, from 5%. They actually buffed it down here. But it was a 5% buff, but you didn't get it through your opponent's turn. So in theory, it's good for maybe soaking up Overwatch, but that's not very good. And the unit that soaks it up, plus 5% HP or not, if you're throwing a soft unit in to soak up Overwatch, is going to die anyway. It's not that big of a deal. So this is a big deal. It also means your Overwatch is going to be a lot more powerful when you have passive like Tank Commander buffs and Castellan buffs. So that's pretty huge. The Valkyrie CP ability can now transport Ogrins, which is awesome. Previously only infantry, so Kazarkin, shock troops, heavy weapon squads. But now they can take Ogrins, which is awesome. Ogrins are a scary unit to be able to drop kind of anywhere you want in a 5-tile radius. All right, the Emperor's Will on the Commissar. This is one of the abilities I was just talking about. Bonus HP boost increased to 10% from 5%. That's huge. That's really, really nice. It's a sizable buff to even your small units. It puts them above, grenade damage range, which is quite nice. But it affects your tanks as well. So, 10% on a Rogel Dorn, my friend. That is a lot of HP. It's 50 more HP for your opponent to chew through. So Execute adds momentum to the surrounding tiles as well as the targeted unit, and can be used to target a unit that was previously targeted to refresh the boost. So this is really big. Previously, you'd execute a model in the unit that was damaged, the weakest model in the unit, and that unit would get a momentum boost. Now it is all the units around, which feels a bit more appropriate. I imagine they would all witness the Commissar executing a coward and feel a bit more inspired. So that's really nice, and the fact that you can keep targeting one unit is very nice. If you have a squad of guardsmen that have some low health, you can keep using that unit instead of affecting a new unit every turn. Show Them Steel also got a buff. That is his melee buff to all units within one tile. Added a ranged crit chance of 10%. It was previously only a melee crit chance, so that's huge. Cooldown set to 2 turns, so it is quite a bit stronger, I think, when you're giving out ranged buffs as well. And yeah, so the increased cooldown makes sense. And I guess there was an issue with how it was doing momentum math, so they fixed that as well. Up next, Castellan. Voice of Leadership. Accuracy boost increased to 10 from 5. That is huge. That is more than most of the accuracy fall off in your arsenal. Most units, even the big ones, have an accuracy fall off of 10. Some have 15, more, less, but that really affects pretty much every gun in your army, at least the majority of them. Bring it down. Increase the range to 5 tiles. That is very nice. You had to be a little too close to comfort to pick a target. And reduce the cooldown to 2 turns. So that's nice. It used to be a 3-turn cooldown. Every 2 turns is very strong. You can pick a target pretty much every other turn, and it is significantly easier to kill it. And then just kind of clarified the status effect, which is it ends at the end of the caster's turn. So it doesn't persist through your opponent's turn. And this is probably, if I had to guess, this is the biggest change to Guard that significantly increased their power level. There's some other stuff in here that's really spicy, but this is the biggest. Move, move, move applies to all units within a 1-tile radius of the Castellan. And the cooldown goes from 2 to 3. That's insane. I mean, the amount of value you are getting, that is a mini Sisters buff. It's a mini Sisters buff every 3 turns on the units you need most. It's really, really nice. This is going to give your whole battle line a lot more utility. You can buff multiple transports, multiple units, multiple tanks. It's really, really good. You can buff units that get into transports that also receive the buff. So it's pretty crazy. I'm into it. Tank Commander. Shock and Awe, so his damage bonus increased from 10 to 5%. Again, really significant. Less so on your lasguns, but really significant on your tanks. The battle cannon range got tweaked. I think it previously had a minimum range. I think they got rid of that. Pound Them to Dust. This is probably the second most impactful change, if I had to guess. Pound Them to Dust is now a buff skill that gives plus 100% shots for all weapons to a nearby vehicle. Just gonna let that sink in for a moment. This applies to every gun on a Rogel Dorn, every gun on a Leman Russ, every gun on another tank commander. And if you tank 2 commanders, you can do this every other turn. Or 2 turns in a row. Or on 2 different targets. Or on the same target. Actually, I don't think you can hit the same target once in the same turn, but still. Bananas. This is different, though. Blitz Them used to be sort of a damage reduction on his weapon in order to do a lot more splash damage and multiple shots. So this is different. Now gives the Blitz charge ability to a friendly Leman Russ or Rogel Dorn and an incoming Graze buff to any vehicle. So it's 2 things. One, you get the ability to yeet your battle tanks at the opponent's line with a charge attack, which sounds kind of like a meme until you remember that you can put heavy flamers on every tank. Oh, and by the way, those got buffed because they're cheaper now. And the incoming Graze, essentially, I think it's a 10% chance for enemy attacks to graze, which means they do 10% of their total damage. So it's actually very good. It is a significant amount of damage reduction pretty reliably. It's going to take your opponent's biggest damage attacks and potentially reduce them to a fraction of their damage potential. It might be a little busted. The graze mechanic, I understand the intent, but it kind of just feels bad sometimes right now. It makes sense. The idea is that small arms weapons can't do as much damage to tanks or higher armor units in general. But it also applies to bigger, any armor differential. So you can have an AP8 weapon shooting an AP9 target that does 200 damage, for example, and it'll graze and do 36. And it's just doesn't really feel how it should work. But hey, whatever. Everyone has their take on this. So up next, we have buffs to the Leman Russ battle tank. Sponson upgrades have to match the tank commander. So that's really nice. It's kind of how I thought they should have been launched, where the sponsons are not very expensive. You can just kind of mix and match and have a lot of fun with them and not be too punished if you want to try and make a multi-melt work. Also, remember, a multi-melt is 2 shots. So pound them to dust. That's 4 multi-melta shots. Just gonna lay that out there. They reduced the points by 10, which I think is nice. Las Cannon cooldown went from 3 to 2, and it ditched its minimum range. I think it used to have a minimum range of 5, which is kind of annoying sometimes. But this is very good. Using your Las Cannons every other turn, very good. Plasma Cannon also, I believe, had a minimum range, so they just got rid of those. Demolisher, an AP buff from AP5 to AP6. That is a spicy meatball. Oh yes, I think we are going to see a lot of Demolishers. And then the Vanquisher range, I believe it used to have a minimum of 5, and it is now 3, so they adjusted that a bit. Rogaldorn. The Pulverizer is now a free upgrade, so you can take that big battle cannon on the hull. Sponson Multi-Melta is now 10 points, so it used to be 30, so significantly more affordable now. And the Twin Battle Cannon range, again, I think they removed its minimum. Heavy Bolter got 4 more attacks, sponsons, so that's really nice. The Oppressor range, again, I believe they also reduced its minimum. The Pulverizer went from AP4 to AP5, so it's free, and it got an AP upgrade. The Rogaldorn felt like a lot of points to invest in a unit. It's starting to feel like that is more and more a value proposition. Armored Sentinel, this is a unit that needed a lot of help. It was kind of too fragile for its points, died too quickly, but it got some interesting changes. So it is cheaper, 15 points cheaper, which is huge. The Plasma Cannon, again, reduced that minimum range, and then it got 2 shots at 50 damage. So that's quite nice. Instead of, I believe it was just a single with splash damage. Multi-laser range, I can't remember how that changed, but Harassing Fire now target 3 adjacent enemies but fires fewer shots. This is very interesting to me. Think about Necron gun lines, for example. Not particularly fast and very scary to everything in your army. If you have a Sentinel that can, every 3 turns, take a turn of movement away from them, or think about a fast faction like Sisters, that's pretty incredible. I think that's really, really good. Accidentally gave Pound Them to Dust to another tank commander. I'm sure that was fun. Chimera, so same, I think range is tweaked. The run over ability, their charge ability, was changed to a minimum of 2 to reflect that it's a charge, not a melee attack. And then Fix an Issue, it wasn't doing damage on the charge, which was very sad. Cadian Shock Troops, these also got a pretty significant rework. So they are a base 40 cost, but now frag grenades are standard in all loadouts, which is nice. You pay an extra 5 points for the bayonets, but bayonets are so good, and they got buffed. Bayonets are now AP4 instead of AP3. So I think these are potentially the best infantry unit in the game. They're very, very good. They're really, really good. Very good value for points. Still very squishy, less so with a Commissar now, but very good. Also, you get a bit more momentum now when they die, which is great. Sort of helps address guards' momentum gain issues. Kazurkin. Evasion 10 to 5. So that's nice. A little bit more survivable. But their hotshot lasguns got a bit of a buff. I also like this change that they target single models instead of spreading out shots. I think on the surface that might not feel as good because you're like, oh, I can't like hit him with a tank, or I don't know. But I think it's actually quite good because you are guaranteeing removing incoming damage, which is much better than damage you have to follow up on. I think that's quite a nice change. I think it's going to make them an even better elite unit. The volley gun, yep, upgrade. It's now 10 points. It was free before, so you're paying a bit more for that volley gun, but I think that's fine. So the accuracy bonus is consistent. I think there was an issue with that. And then I guess the Melt-A-Mine got even less HP, so I think it dies to grenades and stuff now more easily. So Ogren's got an HP buff to 160, which is fantastic. They're now transportable by the Valkyrie, also fantastic. Dropping a squad of Ogren's somewhere on the board is quite nice. And then they also had an issue with their charge ability that has been fixed. All right, so the heavy weapon squad's got similar reworks. Lascannon's got a bit of an accuracy nerf, and now they also target single enemy models. So they are truly dedicated, single target killers now, which I think is better for how the unit is designed. Autocannons also got some help. Their accuracy went down, but they got 3 more attacks, which is big. They didn't have very many attacks before. And again, they are targeting single units, which I think is nice. You can have a theme now. Your Kazurkin, your heavy weapon squads, they are going to be killing things in the same manner, which you can use to efficiently take down units, which I think is quite nice. It has a little bit of synergy between a couple elite units. So Poured On adds 1 shot per 2 stacks spent. So up from 1 per stack. Wait, that's plus 1 shots per 2 stacks. Up from per 1 stack. I see. Oh, so that's a slight nerf because they got more base shots. And then the Poured On cooldown is every other turn now, so you can't just do it every time. Missile Launcher also got a little bit of an accuracy debuff. Psyker, not much here, but it got 2 attacks instead of 1, so that's a little buff. But it got a rework to its abilities, which is quite nice. Night Shroud, it now gains momentum from using its abilities. Previously, it didn't really have a way to gain momentum to unlock one of its abilities. So now casting gives you momentum, which is similar to how healing gives you momentum with some other characters. So, yeah, so that's quite nice. And then they sort of changed where it is in the skill tree and Planetary Supremacy. Mental Shackles, got a cooldown nerf, but it gives momentum and it gives a minus 30 accuracy debuff, which is huge. So I think that's quite nice. Basilisk, this got a lot of tweaks, and I think it needed it. Steady aim, so now it uses an ability to make an attack with plus 10 accuracy for every movement point spent. So just a bit more consistent than how it was worded previously. Barrage is now updated to not use accuracy. It just fires 3 shots in a 3x3 area, which is really nice. I still don't know if it's good enough. We'll play around and find out perchance. But I don't know. I like that the mechanic is clearer with how it works, and it is more consistent in that sense. And maybe because of that, we'll be able to find some more uses for it. Artillery targeting was reworked, so it gives a buff to the firing basilisk each time it deals damage with an aimed earth cannon shot. So it has to hit the unit or have been aiming at it, and a scatter shot hits it. So that's how it's going to get that. Now, previously you just had to target it, and even if you missed, it had that that unit had an accuracy buff for your basilisk attached to it. But it loses movements like setup, so if you move, you lose that. And then Barrage does not add stacks to that because it's not an aimed attack. So that's kind of key there. And then they changed some visual effects stuff, which is nice. The fire rate of multi-lasers and the speed of all las weapon projectiles, which is kind of nice. So there you go. Orc Gretchen, they caught a stray. Their accuracy was reduced from 90 to 75. And then Necrons, this is important. So their 1 CP ability, they now have -1 action points on their first team, which means they can still do that initial charge, but they can't then charge it or do more damage, which is nice. It also takes away one more bit of movement from them. So I think that's nice. Scarabs are still one of the mechanics that make Necrons very, very competitive in multiplayer. So we'll see if this has a noticeable impact. I think it might. And then they also got a little buff on their self-destruct protocol, which I believe is that they essentially are a hand grenade now. They sort of do damage equal to a hand grenade, which they did not before. So there you go. There are the changes. There are the updates. I think it's going to make Guard very strong. We're going to find out. We're going to play some games here in a bit. But let me know what you think. I'm very curious to hear your thoughts. There's a lot of experienced Guard players out there in both PvE and PvP. Let me know what you think.